What's happening, everyone? Sam aka FIFA Brit from Gold Boys here. Remember in my first video about soccer this season when I said I was really excited to record content every weekend? Yeah, me neither. I don't remember saying that either, but it doesn't matter. We're back and we are ready to record content again. So yeah, don't worry, forget about the last few months. You thought there was a video coming, it never came. Well, today is your lucky day because we are back recording content. And it is time to break down the Saturday soccer slate. So, without further ado, let's get into the Premier League action. The early morning kickoff is Leicester against Chelsea. This is an important game because it's Enzo Maresca's first game back against his former club. He used to manage Leicester, got them promoted, and then went to Chelsea after Chelsea fired Pochettino. So, that's a pretty important game for him as a Chelsea manager. It's also a pretty important game for Chelsea because they're actually playing quite well right now. Obviously, it's important for Leicester, but really, every game is important for Leicester. They are threatened with relegation as a newly promoted club, so really, any result is a good result for them. You can't really pick and choose what's a big game when you're a newly promoted club. Every game is pretty much a big game. Now, they're probably not expecting to win here, even though they are at home. They are around plus 500 on the money line. Chelsea are heavily favoured, even away from home. But to be fair, that's probably warranted, which I didn't think I would be saying last season. But yeah, they're playing really well right now. Problem is, there isn't really much value on this game. You can't really take both teams to score because it's heavily juiced. Chelsea are playing well, but they are expected to concede. You can't really back Leicester because Chelsea are still playing really well, but you can't back Chelsea either because they're like minus 200 to win the game. Can't back Cole Palmer because, as much as I don't like to admit it as an Arsenal fan that supports Saka very heavily, look, I can admit Cole Palmer's a very good player. Problem is, he is priced as such. So, even though this game should be exciting, I just don't think it's worth necessarily betting, especially considering Leicester have Facundo Buonanotte suspended. If I was going to bet anyone, it would be him, because I love his shots. He's been ripping shots like a motherfucker recently. So I usually love him, but he's not playing in this one. So, frankly, as much as it should be an interesting one, I'm not really that interested in betting it. I don't know if you guys know this about me, but I will happily tell you a game is interesting, but I will also tell you when not to bet it. And frankly, I don't really see much value in this one, so I'm going to move on to the next one. The next game I want to talk about is Bournemouth against Brighton. Now, this game is bettable, because you can take both teams to score an over 2.5 and get it at around minus 130. Considering both of these teams love to score goals and really aren't that brilliant at defending, I think that's a really good price. I haven't even shopped that around yet. That is just a number I looked up while I was doing research for my podcast, which I'm about to record, even though by the time this video comes out, my podcast will already be out. That's what happens when you record stuff in advance. By the way, if you're not listening to the podcast, you can find it in the link in the description. It is called The Final Third. Go and check it out. But anyway, enough about that. Let's keep talking about this game. I see goals in this game. Both teams to score over 2.5. If you can get that for minus 130 or better, I think that's a play. I'm not locking it in yet because I want to see lineups. I want to make sure that each team is playing its main threats. For Bournemouth, we're looking at Semenyo. We're looking at Evan Nilsson. We're looking at Tavernier. Looking at guys like that. For Brighton, I want to see Matoma. I want to see Welbeck. If Ruta is fit, I'd love to see him. If João Pedro is fit, I want to see him. I would love to see him. He's done really well off the bench recently. He was hurt for a while, but he came off the bench, scored against City, which was a brilliant result, by the way. Loved watching that one before the international break. So if João Pedro is ready and fit to go, please, I want to see him start. If all those main guys are starting, I love both teams to score and over 2.5. Like I said, if you can get that at minus 130 or better, I think that's a really, really good play for this game. Next game I want to talk about is Arsenal against Forest. Now, if you guys don't know me by now, you should know I am an Arsenal fan. This is very apparent from the everything about me, and the only reason I'm not wearing my Arsenal shirt right now is because I wore it in the first video of the season, and I haven't recorded a video since then, and I really don't like reusing my outfits, at least on back-to-back videos, even though it's been several months between vids. So, Arsenal against Forest. Now, Arsenal are at home, and look, this isn't going to be a surprise to anyone. Arsenal are very good at home. Have they been shaky recently? Yeah, they've only got 2 wins in their last 6 games in the last month. But we've been ravaged with injuries. Saka hasn't been 100% fit. We only got Odegaard back very recently. So this hasn't been the strongest Arsenal lineup. That being said, even though Saka is questionable for this game against Forest, I do expect him to play. Odegaard started our last game. He got an assist. First game back. Absolutely love to see that, by the way. So assuming Saka and Odegaard are healthy, Arsenal should be winning this game. Problem is, they are priced accordingly. They're about minus 300 to win. That being said, we shouldn't be disrespecting Forest here. Forest have been playing incredibly well to start this season. Chris Wood, their striker, is in the form of his life right now. And he is priced above plus 400 to score a goal. If you think Forest are going to score, you can get both teams to score at around even odds. Now, Arsenal's defence is usually good, but we haven't been the defensive wagon that we were in the past couple of seasons. So if you think Forest are going to score, both teams to score is a good play. And statistically speaking, if Forest do score, it's probably coming off a Chris Wood goal, at least based on what we've seen in this season so far. So if you want to get a little frisky about it, which, you won't see any complaints from me. I mean, if Forest do score, I'll be complaining as an Arsenal fan, but when you price his goal at above plus 400, it's really hard to ignore that, even against Arsenal and even when Forest are playing away from home. So if Chris Wood is starting, I think it's really hard to ignore that price. Even though Arsenal are really good, and Arsenal should win this game. But if you want to involve Chris Wood to score a goal, which he has done frequently this season, both for club and country. I know New Zealand have a really easy group in the Oceanic qualification groups. They were winning like 7 and 8-0. But Chris Wood got like 5 goals in 2 games or something absurd like that. So he's in goal-scoring form for club and country, and even against Arsenal. Plus 400 is really, really difficult to ignore. Anyway, let's move on to the next game, which is Crystal Palace against Villa. I've actually said that in the wrong order. It's Aston Villa against Palace. Aston Villa are at home. Now, you might see Aston Villa priced at around minus 160 or minus 170 at home and think, Aston Villa are supposed to be quite good, yeah? And they're playing at home, and they're playing Crystal Palace, who have been really poor this season, and they've only won about 1 game in the league, I think it is. I think it was against Spurs. I think it's still their only win of the entire season, which, by the way, objectively hilarious, as someone who really doesn't like Spurs. But then you look at Aston Villa's recent form, and you realise that they have in fact lost 4 games in a row. So, they're not exactly in the best form right now. That being said, Palace are not looking brilliant. Also, Eze is still potentially questionable for this game. He came off hurt a couple of weeks ago, and he hasn't been 100% fit. I'll be perfectly honest, I'm not sure if he's going to start this game. If he does, then Palace should be able to find a goal, even with Eze in the team, they have not been firing on all cylinders whatsoever. They haven't really been scoring very frequently, and they're not brilliant at defending, especially on the road. So, even though Aston Villa are in really horrible form, we could be getting a decent price on them just to win this game. I mean, it's difficult to play a minus 170 money line as a straight, but if you want to pair it with something else, or maybe just parlay their double chance and mix it in with something else for a builder, I wouldn't complain about that. If Aston Villa lose at home to Palace, even if Eze does play for Palace, now that would be embarrassing. And all the people that say that Unai Emery is a better manager than Arteta, well, really interesting. They've gone quite quiet recently. So expect them to stay quiet if Aston Villa continue to screw that up. That being said, look, if we're being completely objective, Aston Villa should win this game, okay? They're priced accordingly to their terrible form recently, but at home against a pretty poor Palace side, you really should be winning this game. Minus 170, I wouldn't play straight. I think it's a little bit rough to play that straight, but if you want to pair it with something else, be my guest. I don't hate that at all. Next game I'm going to talk about in the Premier League is Fulham against Wolves. Now, I have a fun little statistical tidbit of information for you about Fulham. Since they played Man U on the first game of this season in the Premier League, they have not lost a game on XG. If you're not familiar with XG, it's short for expected goals, and essentially calculates the odds that you should have scored on a shot. So if you have a 0.01 XG on a shot, that means you had a 1% chance of scoring a goal on that shot. Now, XG is an interesting stat that I don't really have time to delve into the specifics of what's good and what's bad about it, but it's a fairly decent, not brilliant, but a decent indication of how many chances you're creating and to some extent the quality of the chances you're creating. Not necessarily as a cumulative stat, but it can at least tell you, it gives you a pretty good snapshot of the game. If you have a higher XG than someone else, then that for the most part means that you created more / better chances. It's usually one or the other. Sometimes it's both. You can't really tell unless you break it down shot by shot. But that's a long way of saying that Fulham have actually been playing really well when it comes to their chance creation. Their conversion is a different matter entirely, and I'm looking at you, Adama Traore. If you guys have ever watched Adama Traore play, he is incredibly quick, he's incredibly strong, but he can't really finish his chances. And he's actually one of the worst performers regarding XG in the entire Premier League right now. So that's not ideal. That being said, Raul Jimenez is playing in brilliant form, again for both club and country. He scored a banger of a goal against the US. It was a free kick about a month ago, the international break before the one we just had. Playing really well for Mexico, and he's playing really well for Fulham as well. Smith Rowe is playing brilliantly for Fulham as an Arsenal fan. Again, I'm happy to see him succeed. And as much as I think he'd be helpful in our squad right now, we sold him for 30 million, which is really kind of hard to turn down. So, you know, good for him. And he's playing well, so fair enough. Now, Wolves, on the other hand, are not playing well. Now, in their defense, they've had one of the hardest fixture lists to start the season that I think I've ever seen. I mean, they've played Arsenal, they've played City, they've played Liverpool. They've played, basically every big club they have played, and they've played them early on, too. They haven't really had what you would call an easy game, and I don't think this is an easy game either. That being said, they're still bottom of the league. They haven't been playing well. At least I think they're still bottom of the league. I don't know. I haven't checked. Should probably check that. But, yeah, look. They're not playing brilliantly right now. And Fulham are at home and a price at around -150 just to win on the money line. Now, remember how I said I wouldn't take Aston Villa money line at -170 straight up? Yeah, well, I probably wouldn't do that for Fulham either. But now, if you want to get a little frisky, you want to parlay the two money lines. You want to parlay Fulham money line and Aston Villa money line. Two teams that should win at home against inferior opposition. All right, now we're looking at something in the +150 to +200 range. Now, that's a little fun, wouldn't you agree? I agree. I'm the one who said it, so of course I'm going to agree. But yeah, look, Fulham should win this game. Assuming Smith Rowe starts, assuming Jimenez is fit and healthy and can start. If these guys are playing, that looks good. On the Wolves side, they really need Mateus Cunha to play if they want any chance of doing anything. And another guy I think is really good is Aït-Nouri, their left wing-back. He's a very creative player, and I think he's been involved in about half of Wolves' goals for the season, with goals and assists as a wing-back. So, if you can get a nice price on him to score or assist, I think that's worth looking at. That being said, it's still risky. He is a wing-back, and he can always be forced into a more defensive role, especially if they somehow take an early lead. Oh, and by the way, on the Fulham side, I almost forgot to mention, if Harry Wilson isn't starting, which to be fair, I think he does deserve to start because he's been in ridiculous form off the bench. If Harry Wilson is not starting for Fulham and he's on the bench, you set notifications, go onto whatever app you have, click him, favorite him, do whatever it takes to get notifications on if you can't watch the game. And if he subs in, save a little bit of money and sprinkle on him to score, especially if Fulham need a goal. If it's a draw or if they're losing, sprinkle on him to score a goal because he has been in ridiculous form off the bench. So keep that one in mind. Before we get to the big Premier League game, I do have to mention the fact that Everton against Brentford is going on. The problem is, I don't really love it for anything. So I don't really want to talk about it outside of me saying this is a weird game and I probably wouldn't touch it. Unless you can get plus money on Mbeumo to score or assist. But even then, Everton at home always have the potential to park the bus. So even then, I wouldn't say it's a definitive, really good move. But I'm just saying, if Brentford are scoring, it's going to come from Mbeumo or Wisso. One of those two. But anyway, let's talk about the big game, the one that everybody cares about. Man City against Spurs. Now, Man City are at home, and Man City should win this. But you have never seen a City side more vulnerable than it is now. Pep Guardiola has lost 4 games in a row for the first time in his entire managerial career. That being said, we do have to talk about the fact that he just signed a new 2-year contract. There was a lot of speculation about Pep's future, especially with Man City currently under investigation for their 115 charges by the Premier League. That's still ongoing. We still don't know what's going to happen with that. So Pep's future was up in the air. That being said, he's just signed a new deal. So that's put at least the Pep side of the Man City drama to bed for the time being. So, if City are now playing for a newly renewed Pep contract, they've got the contract, now they're playing for their manager again, there's no concern about what he's going to do, then yeah, look, it's City at the end of the day. You can lose 4 in a row, and I can still look at Man City priced at minus 200 at home and think, you know what, that's almost selling them short. Against Spurs, who, to be fair, weirdly play well against Man City. I mean, they usually get matched in like the League Cup, and I think they just beat them in the League Cup this season. But again, it's the League Cup. If you looked at the footage, Man City players were laughing on the bench as they were losing. They did not care about that game at all. But, historically speaking, Spurs have been weirdly good against Man City. Unfortunately, I don't think this is the game, but that's going to continue. I do expect City to win here. The problem is, it's just really hard to bet them. Haaland is priced at minus 150 to score, and even though he had a pretty decent international break, he's got a hat-trick, but it was against Kazakhstan, you know? I don't really rate a hat-trick against Kazakhstan, you know? And by his standards, is he playing well? Yeah, but he hasn't been playing as well as he was at the start of the season, and neither have Man City in general. So, really hard to bet them on the player prop side. With Spurs, if you think they score, I think Kulusevski is a pretty decent look for a goal or an assist. He's been playing really well recently, had a good international break for Sweden, and he's emerging as one of Spurs' best players in his new position as a sort of like advanced 8. And there's also been a lot of rumors about Pep liking Kulusevski. So if you think that Pep's going to make a move for Kulusevski, and you can basically view this as an audition, if you like his shots, you like his goal, you like his assist, I rate him highly. And coming from an Arsenal fan, which if you couldn't tell by now, I am an Arsenal fan. You hear me praise a Spurs player, that means it's got to have some weight behind it, okay? So that's the big Premier League game. That's what I like for that one. And you know what? Let's hop into another league. Let's talk about a couple of games abroad. Well, I say abroad. I'm in America now, so every game's abroad. But let's talk about some continental Europe games, because even though I love the Premier League, it is worth talking about some of these other games as well. Specifically, in La Liga, let's talk about Celta Vigo against Barcelona. Now, Barcelona are away from home, and there is a chance that Yamal is not playing in this game. But if you see Barcelona at minus 160 in La Liga, even though that price doesn't look very good, and again, I wouldn't take it straight, you have to understand that's probably a pretty good deal. Now, have Barcelona been kind of weird, kind of funky recently? Yeah, but overall, right now, they are the best team in La Liga, okay? Madrid are in the absolute shitter, okay? And that should not come as a surprise to anyone that's actually watched them play this season, okay? Barcelona are playing brilliantly right now, and even if they don't have Yamal, if they've got Rafinha, who is in ridiculous form right now, they've got Lewandowski playing, if Fermin Lopez is playing, if Dani Olmo is playing, if any of those guys are playing, minus 160 for Barcelona to win a game against Celta Vigo, even though they are away from home, I think is really good. Again, if you want to pair that with something else, go ahead, be my guest. The last game on Saturday that I want to talk about is over in Italy. This one's a really exciting one. It is AC Milan against Juve. Now, I say it's exciting because we have two pretty big heavyweight teams playing each other. However, what's not exciting is the fact that this is a really difficult game to bet. And I say that because, and this is going to sound like a cop-out, and in a way it is, I don't really want to pick a side on, frankly, anything. If you want to convince me that AC Milan are going to win at home at plus money on their money line, I'd be like, okay, yeah, fair enough. If you want to convince me that Juventus haven't lost a game in ages, and you want to sell me on their double chance at minus 160, even though they're playing away from home, even though they're playing AC Milan, I'd be like, okay, yeah, you can sell me on that. The over-under is 2.5. Under is about minus 140. You want to sell me on a cagey game in the Serie A? Yeah, you can sell me on that. It doesn't take much to sell me on an under 2.5 at minus 140 in the Serie A. But then, if you want to tell me that Juventus games have been pretty high scoring recently, and you want to sell me on over 2.5 at plus money, I'd be like, okay, yeah, I can see that. This is my very long-winded way of saying that the reason I don't want to pick a side is because I don't think you're going to get much value on either side here, because this is really a game where anything could happen. Milan could win. Juventus could get a result. This could be a boring 1-0, 0-0, maybe a 1-1. Or we could see a 3-2 thriller. Now, I know in theory, on paper, that's the case for any game. But some games are typically more predictable than others. And part of my job as a capper is to tell you, okay, here's the range of possible outcomes that I think can occur. And if I see value on a bet, then I'm going to bet that. And that is an incredibly simplified version of what handicapping sports in general is like. Now, I'm telling you that this game, while it's going to be fascinating to watch, I don't think picking a side, whether it's the total, whether it's a team, I don't think, and this is my personal opinion, if someone else that it's also smart disagrees and has a really strong opinion on a side, you know what, fair enough. You want to listen to them? I won't stop you. All I'm saying is that this game I think is really difficult to predict, and I'm not confident either way on either the side or the total. So, do with that as you will. That being said, if you can get plus money on Christian Pulisic to score or assist, the guy is in ridiculous form, again for club and country. So if you can get plus money on him to score or assist, even plus money on his shot on target, anything like that, I think that's probably worth a little bit, alright? He will be involved one way or another. But yeah. So yeah, that's the video content back. Now, I know I said in my first video this season that I would have more video content. When I say it now, I mean it. We will have a video covering the Sunday slate, so keep your eyes peeled for that. If you're not subscribed to the Gold Boys YouTube channel, go and click the button below, hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and keep your eyes tuned, not just for my videos, but for other videos from other cappers as well. By the way, if you're not in the Gold Boys Discord, if you haven't signed up for a membership yet, go ahead and do that right now. The link will be in the description. You can sign up at goldboys.com. As always, if you do have a gambling problem, don't forget to call the number 1-800-GAMBLER. And yeah, best of luck with all your bets this weekend. It is great to be recording content again. If you're not following me on Twitter, you can do so at FIFABrit. Go and check me out. Like I said earlier, you can listen to my podcast, The Final Third. The link will be in the description for that as well. And yeah, have a brilliant Saturday. Best of luck with all your bets, and I will catch you guys in the next one.